I want to know who should be held responsible for Justice League. Now, I did go into this movie with a mixture of pessimism and cautious optimism. Pessimism because of the travesties that were Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, and optimism because of the incredibly good Wonder Woman. Which one of those won out? Well, I didn't hate Justice League. I thought it was certainly an improvement over Batman v Superman. However, it was still quite a mess, and that left me feeling angry. But before I get into what it was that made me angry and what I did not like, I'll first go through what I thought was good, because there were plenty of things that were good. First, the actors and the characters. Ben Affleck does a fine Batman. Henry Cavill, when they actually give him something to do, is great as Superman. Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman. I think that she is the shining light of the DCEU. I was pleasantly surprised by Jason Momoa's Aquaman, and while not familiar with the character of Cyborg, I thought that Ray Fisher did a fine job. So the actors were good. Oh, and of course Ezra Miller as the Flash, also very good. So the actors were good, but I'll get into the characters a little bit later. The overall story wasn't bad. It was a fairly simple, straightforward story in which we knew what was happening, somewhat understood motivations, and knew what had to be done to stop the bad guy. A simple story told well is better than a convoluted plot with twists told poorly. I mean, look at Wonder Woman, a straightforward plot. She wants to find and stop Ares. But it was told well, with fully developed characters and motivations. Then look at BVS. I couldn't tell you what the hell the motivations were for most of the characters. Why did Luthor hate Superman so much? We just met him. Why did Batman lose any sense of reason? What was the motivation for Doomsday? It was just a mess. But I did like that this film took most of the battle away from civilization. A problem with many superhero films today is that there's always some earth-threatening event that takes place right in the view of everyone. It's nice when that earth-threatening event is not on public display and the heroes still do their best to stop it. I often think of that when I'm watching Doctor Who. Often earth-threatening events, but it always seems to be in public. You can have just as threatening an earth-threatening event happen, but it can be on a smaller scale and the story can be told many times better. There were also many little moments or scenes that had heart and endeared you to the characters. Unfortunately, they often felt like just tiny moments that were divorced from the plot. Now, here's where I start to get angry. I'll talk about the characters, storytelling, action, and the filmmakers. While we get to meet some new and cool characters and each have a couple of interesting moments, we really don't get any backstory or insight into what motivates them, beyond what we've seen in the trailers. A truly great character is one where we understand their motivations, can really empathize with, and understand where they're coming from. It's not enough to say, this is a good guy, so you should like them. The same with the villain. Why does he want to destroy worlds? What does he get from that? I don't know. Also, we have these new superheroes, but what are their powers? What are their limits? Why is Aquaman flying around in the sky? I mean, if you can establish what each person's abilities and weaknesses are, then the audience will understand the level of threat that they face. In Justice League, they all just seemed like indestructible, all-powerful people that I never really felt were in jeopardy. And again, Aquaman riding a parademon down from the sky through a 5-story building and skidding out the bottom. Totally destroyed any suspension of disbelief. The storytelling was not good. Partly for some of the reasons that I've already mentioned, but also because of others. The movie was only 2 hours long. Now, BVS was much longer than that, and it was far too long for the mess that it was. But this felt rushed. This needed to be longer to flesh out characters and develop the plot. Even within scenes, the pacing was so fast. Bruce recruiting Barry scene was barely longer than that in the trailer. In fact, much of the time it felt like we were watching a film made of clips from a trailer. There were apparently notes from the studio to keep the movie no longer than 2 hours. But with this many new characters and a lot of story to tell, it certainly needed more. The tone of the film was certainly lighter than BVS. In fact, I think it was too light in places where it needed to be darker, or at least more serious. This was clearly a reaction to how BVS was received, but simply making it lighter is no solution to having a good story. A good story told well will work regardless of its tone or length. Wonder Woman was lighter in tone and was over 2 hours, and it was incredible. Blade Runner 2049 was a very dark and almost 3 hours long work of art. Both had good storytelling. Now, I always dread the action scenes in these movies. This is because they often strain credulity. Aquaman falling out of the sky. Or they're just a bunch of visual noise. Justice League had some good action moments. I really liked the treatment of the Flash. Seeing those scenes from his point of view was great. But most of it fell into the category of noisy, pushing beyond the suspension of disbelief garbage that is not at all interesting and does not serve character or plot. All this is what makes me angry. The studio spent somewhere between $250 and $300 million on Justice League. For that money, you should be able to get competent filmmakers, people that understand story and understand character, action, pacing, and everything that goes into making a good film. It's not like filmmakers like this don't exist. Even in the DCEU, Patty Jenkins made one of the best superhero movies ever. I mean, there are many great filmmakers out there that would love to tell a good story, but don't get the chance because the studios put out subpar stuff like this. Part of it is the filmmakers that they choose to helm the projects. I'm sorry, but Zack Snyder's vision for the DCEU was wrong, but they stuck with him. And I also blame the studio execs. All of the bad DCEU films, which sadly is most of them, with perhaps the exception of Man of Steel, and certainly Wonder Woman, have been a terrible mess with obvious signs of studio interference. If the execs are not filmmakers, they should shut up and let the real filmmakers make the movie. If it doesn't perform well, then move on. But this constant interference is almost ensuring that the films will suck. Looking at box office right now, it looks like Justice League is not performing as well as anticipated. To that, I say good. Warner Brothers needs a kick in the teeth. They need to learn to trust the filmmakers, to tell good stories, and to treat audiences with respect. That would be justice.